Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. It's Friday, the 28th of November. I hope you're all happy and healthy, doing the things that you love. With those you love to do them with. Big game tomorrow night against the Fulham. It's going to be fascinating to see how Tottenham line up and if Tottenham can continue some sort of momentum that came from a better performance, albeit a disappointing result away in Paris. But today, we've got to talk about things like transfer news, views, and clues. We'll do a preview of that show tomorrow morning. Instead, we'll get on with the transfer news, views, and clues right now. So please do smash the like button for me. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. I want to say massive thank you to everybody that has, as always, shown their major support for the channel in the game of likes and comments and shares and those sorts of things. I appreciate you all very, very much. Last friendly reminder, we are also always on Spotify and Apple Pods and Amazon and all that jazz. So if you'd like to watch this, but in a different format, then you can check us out on them. Search for Spurs Talk Show or go to the description and find the links. Guys, let's start with this player from Stade Rennais, shall we? Jeremy Jacquet. I've just picked Football Talk as the aggregator that's talking about it, but it is all over the various aggregators. I think the story started with caught offside yesterday that Manchester United and Tottenham and a few other clubs that are looking for centre-back reinforcements are looking towards the youngster from Stade Rennais. 6'2" is the man. It would cost about €35 million to find the 20-year-old wearing Tottenham's shirt. Stade Rennais, a team that are always willing to sell. They know they can't keep hold of their great talents. And Jeremy Jacquet, for sure, is one of them. He's a very cultured centre-back, right-footed, right-sided player that has always... I've always been impressed whenever I've seen Stade Rennais play. He's certainly someone who can carry the ball out into midfield. And he's also got enough experience as well under his sort of short tenure where he has seen some minutes play as a right back, given some credibility to his ball passing skill sets as well. He has contributed a little bit in terms of goals and assists this season already, but he's up there in the 85th percentile for tackles and interceptions. If we have a little look at the more detailed versions, you can see the things with the sort of stands where he stands out. He's got a lovely little long ping on him. 74% accuracy for long pins is no mean feat. 94th percentile for that. A really talented player as well in terms of his defensive attributes. Tackles, as I say, 85th percentile for tackles won. 84th percentile for tackles won. He's more than happy to get up the box as well, get forward. As I say, he can progress the ball forward. If he does lose it or if the ball is sort of lost in transition, he can then use his defensive skill set further up the pitch. And as you can see here, he sits in the 98th percentile for tackles in the attacking third. He's right up there for interceptions, tackles and interceptions, 3.78 per game, 96th percentile relative to all other centre-backs in the top. I'm not sure if it's the top 5 leagues with the French players, with the players from France. It might be the top 10 leagues or top 12 leagues. Not entirely sure. But you can see from here as well, he is someone that likes to take players on with the ball. Think of Micky van der Ven, but on the right-hand side, obviously he hasn't got the same sort of levels of pace, but that's just the ability to break the line, which is often a nicely utilised tool. I think a player like him can grow into many different facets. He is solid in the air. He's strong. He's physical. Like I say, he doesn't mind sliding in, but he stays on his feet most of the time and wins a lot of his physical duels. I'm a big fan of the player, but I still wonder why it is that Tottenham Hotspur are always being linked these days with players that are right-footed, right-sided defenders. And maybe it's because we're looking to bring in someone that can play on the right back position as well, and then obviously give a little bit more of a sort of a versatility to that right-sided option. Someone who's more balanced, who can play on the right-hand side and then handle some of the kind of the natural take-on struggles that Pedro Porro has to deal with every single week. We saw against PSG, some of the issues that I was aware of in that kind of analysis is that when Kvaratskhelia or when Bradley Barcola were trying to take on Pedro Porro, there was a bit of an assumption, and I think by proxy of that, a bit of a tactic, whereby you would see other players like Sarr and Bentancur and maybe Berghvall even sort of hover behind Pedro Porro on the assumption that he might get beaten in a take-on. And if you're going to do that, I don't think you need to do it with 3 players, but if you're doing it with 1 player or even 2 players, those players could be elsewhere marking the areas of the around our box that we weren't marking, which allowed Vitinha to score 2 fantastic goals and have 2 additional strikes that were just wide of the post. I think we struggled with 3 goals from Everett Eze in the same area. We also struggled from Kang In Lee earlier on in the season in the PSG game, and it's happened multiple times. So some of the consequences of Pedro Porro not being a particularly confident defender in one-on-one spaces does maybe sort of preclude some sort of thought process of other teams, other players to support. Excuse me. Excuse me. I have to cut that one out, or maybe I'll leave it in. One take Tottenham. So I'm wondering whether the idea, if we are looking at a Jeremy Jacquet, is for that sort of role. If it's not, if it's to play on the right side, then I guess that would beg the question, what does that mean for the futures of, say, a Danzo? What does that mean for a Romero? I see a lot of people being a little bit frustrated with Romero at the moment, saying, he's just too inconsistent. His concentration levels drop in big games, in big moments, and has cost us. And some people are saying, sell the guy. He's just signed a new contract. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I'd be surprised if Tottenham were to make a move for this player, just because I think we're crowded out with right-footed, right-sided defenders. We've also got players like Ashley Phillips that are doing very well on loan. And, of course, Luka Vuskovic, who, despite playing most of his minutes for Hamburg on the left side, he is right-footed and probably would feel more confident at this stage of his career playing on that right side if he does come back. On that note, by the way, let's move on to story number 2, which is about Luka Vuskovic. And apparently his representatives have played down any notion that there is contract talks at Tottenham right now, that he would be signing a new contract to try to protect him and reward him for his form that he's been showing in Hamburg and to try to fend off any suitors. That apparently isn't on the table, and that Vuskovic says that he is happy, or at least I'm inferring here that he's happy or he's comfortable with his current contract. But it does beg the question, if there is truth to the idea that Tottenham are looking to explore a new contract, but Vuskovic is saying he's not particularly, or his agents, representatives are saying it's not really a rush there. And at the same time, we're hearing from various stories this morning and all of last week that teams as large as Barcelona are seriously considering making a move for the player. We know Hamburg wants to keep him. We know RB Leipzig have been taking looks, and that apparently that they are inundated with expressions of interest for the player, and that representatives are going to meet up with Tottenham and to have a conversation with Thomas Frank in the coming days and weeks to find out what the plan is for Vuskovic next season. And as I said, I've said this before, I don't feel like he feels like a Tottenham player yet, because he's been signed to Tottenham for a long time, but hasn't really spent any time at Tottenham at Hotspur Way. He got 45 minutes, I guess, against Reading in the pre-season, where he scored a goal. Could have got an assist. Could have got an assist, a goal, and a goal line clearance in about the first 8 minutes of his time in a Tottenham shirt. And so if he hasn't really spent any time at Tottenham, it's difficult for him to have any kind of attachment to the club other than just thinking of them as that's who I'm currently employed by. But if he's going to be, if there's going to be interest from other clubs, then Tottenham really need to take a serious look at this guy and figure out exactly what the plan is. And I think that Tottenham fans would be in uproar if we were to allow this guy to kind of motion or hint towards that, he's happy to leave the club and move on to somewhere else. Or stay in Hamburg. And to me, that's a concern. So the fact that if there's truth to this notion that there isn't any interest in him sitting down to sign a new contract, you have to ask why. Everyone would like more money. Everyone would like, to be more secure and get paid a bit more money at that stage in your career. So is there maybe something we can infer from that? I really hope I'm reading in between the lines and misreading what I'm seeing there. But either way, that's the story. So Vuskovic, someone to look out for. Details on that meeting will emerge when it does. Another player that is playing out in Germany that Tottenham have got their eye on, or have done, and used to be a part of the football club, is, of course, Harry Kane. And there's stories out today, from Caught Offside. I'll bring this one up for you just so we can run through it together. That basically he's got no interest in coming back to Tottenham, and that he's got no real interest in going to Manchester United, and essentially that he's very happy in Bayern Munich, and that they might offer him a new contract. Talk scheduled to determine the future of Harry Kane amid Man United, Spurs and Barcelona transfer links. It says Harry Kane to snub the Premier League transfer for Bayern Munich stay. Christian Falk, the guy who's the Bayern Munich, chief transfer specialist, notes that Barcelona have also shown an interest in Kane, but he insists the 32-year-old does not have an interest in moving back to England. That's a big blow for Spurs fans, who would surely love to have this club legend back, while United also need a world-class striker like this to help Ruben Amorim's project make more progress. It could also be seen that Kane would have an eye on the all-time Premier League goal-scoring record, but for now, it seems that's not something that's going to tempt him to come back. He says that, in all honesty, some of the speculation about Kane only being at Bayern for the short term seems disrespectful to such a huge club, and that Kane is a key player for them, scoring all the goals, over 100 goals and 115. I think it's 109 and 115 or something like that. But essentially, that he says that he has no reason to leave Bayern Munich, and that he might end up signing a new contract there, which again would be very interesting. Let's move on, guys, to this next story, which is about a player called Rodrigo Mendoza, who is a young 20-year-old midfielder who plays for my club, Elche. Hasn't played a huge amount of minutes in La Liga. He was in La Liga 2 last season with Elche. Has come up and has been a bright spark in a really impressive initial campaign for Elche in La Liga. He's a very, very sort of comfortable, silky touch type of midfielder. His first touch is sublime. He likes to drive with the ball. And he's an 8 that has played a few minutes as a 6, but generally speaking, leans into a more progressive sort of model. He's not the guy, he hasn't got too many stats in the way of assists and goals for Elche, but he is the sort of guy before the guy in the build-up play, likes to drive forward from midfield and likes to sort of use his technicality and his clever footwork to then find a little bit of space and then play it into somebody else who will then either maybe take a shot, or figure out another key pass to someone else who then puts the ball in the back of the net. So in terms of output, it's not really, the stats don't really sort of sing amazing notes, but in terms of his visual displays and in terms of his overall passing stats and his driving with the ball stats, very impressive for someone so young. But the sample size is fairly small. He hasn't even started all of the games for Elche either. In the 12 games that they played, I think he started about 33% of them. So it will be interesting to see if Tottenham or any of the other clubs that are looking at him will make a move and spend the sort of money it will take based on such a small sample size. But for what it's worth, Arsenal are very interested in him. Chelsea are very interested in him, as are Manchester City. So if all of the big teams are looking at this guy, then all of their scouts are probably in some sort of consensus that he might just be the next big talent coming out of Spain. And so one to look for, one to watch. But like I say, usually if we're competing with those sorts of names, those sorts of teams for those sorts of players, then it will be a likely sort of falling short of the overarching success story. Let's move on to the next story, guys, which is all about Jean-Philippe Mateta. Now, this story came out yesterday that Jean-Philippe Mateta is certainly interested in potentially running down his contract and that finishes in 18 months' time in 2027, and that he would like to go to AC Milan. Now, we know the situation at Crystal Palace, right? Steve Parish, the owner, doesn't like to let players leave, and usually sometimes ends up with these players walking away for free. It certainly happened in the past with a couple of players. Eze only left because of the release clause being essentially struck, and it might happen with Mark Gahey towards the end of the season. There is, of course, the chance that might end up happening with Jean-Philippe Mateta. And if it was to happen in that regard, then all reports yesterday were saying that Mateta wants to go to Serie A and play in Milan. However, there's lots of news out this morning saying that several clubs from the Premier League, Manchester United, Tottenham and Newcastle United, are reportedly ready to recruit Mateta in January over this reportedly stalled deal over a new salary. And that all of these clubs are going to make a move for him. As I say, when it comes to Crystal Palace, when it comes to Steve Parish, it is incredibly difficult to get the guy to move. You're caught between a rock and a hard place in negotiations, and it's very, very difficult. Just a quick update on the Spurs hunt for Antoine Semenyo. There's lots of reports out this morning that are still saying that Tottenham are very, very, I'm not saying confident, but very much not going to just assume that Liverpool have this deal in the bag. I personally think that Semenyo will be the long-term replacement for Mo Salah. He looks entirely dejected as a player. And I'm not in any way, as I said to you for months, I'm not in any way getting my hopes up that just because there's a release fee and just because Tottenham have liquidity, even if it means that we can move quicker than Liverpool or Arsenal for said player, I'm pretty sure I've had my... I don't want to rub salt in the wounds of what happened with the Eze deal, where we might have dragged our feet a little bit on that one, but ultimately, as soon as the deal is on the table, the player and his agent can phone up a preferential club and say, listen, they've triggered the clause. It's now or never. Do you want to do it? And I think if that was the case, both Liverpool or Arsenal would probably try their hand as well. And I think that the player would go there. So despite the report saying that Semenyo is very much part of Tottenham's interests or whatever in the summer. In January, I personally don't believe it will happen. Another player I don't believe will come to Tottenham is this another story about Gleison Bremer, another centre-back that is right-footed, that plays generally either in the middle of a back three or on the right-hand side. And links continue to mount that Tottenham are going to make a move for Gleison Bremer. I mean, look, the guy has a meniscus injury and he's been out for months. He hasn't played since late September or since September. He's been out with a meniscus injury ever since. He's still expected to be out for quite a long time to come. And so, having only played 4 games this season in the Serie A for Juve, he has got 2 assists in those minutes. And he's a fantastic player. He's big, he's strong, he's physical, he's fast, he's good in the air. He's very competent positionally. If you've been in the Serie A defensively, a team like Juve, as long as he has, you're not going to be a bad defender. That's just rule 1, right? It's just a defensive league. And so, the best players... if you're up against, if you're playing as a mainstay in a Serie A top team as a defender, you're going to be a good defender. What I would say is that I do believe, and I've been thinking this for a long time, I do believe that if Thomas Frank is here to stay, then given how deep we have been defending at times, and given how few times we've seen ourselves get in situations where a high line has caught us out, I don't necessarily think we are utilising Micky van de Ven in the best way. I think he is a good defender, but not a top draw defender at the various basic elements of defending, like aerial presence, positional sense, those sorts of things. Where he stands out, where he has always been an absolute monster, is when the pace can come into play and when he can either take the ball out or when he can get us out of trouble, like he did so many times under Ange Postecoglou. If we're going to continue with Thomas Frank, which I think we have absolutely no reason to think that will change anytime soon, unless things really do deteriorate, then I think that there's an obvious option where we could be looking to go and get centre-backs that are better all-round defenders than what we have in Romero and in Micky van de Ven, but who might not necessarily have the incredible pace that Micky van de Ven does, for example, because it's not as necessary if you're sitting your line deep. You need people that are better positionally. You need people that are better in the aerial presence. You need people that have incredible concentration and just understand the way to maneuver in those sort of tight areas when it's compact, when teams are coming at you. I'm not saying that we want to sell those players, Romero or Micky van de Ven, but I would say that we should be able to reposition Micky van de Ven into a position where we can utilise his pace a little bit better. And I think if you were to look at playing him as a left back in a back 4, he still does have the ability to be a very good defender that in certain take-on scenarios he's going to survive in and thrive in. Also, if there are tricky wingers that want to take him on, he's got the pace to be able to, and the acceleration to be able to resolve those sorts of challenges. And then on the ball, be able to move forward. He can be incredibly dangerous carrying the ball out. Think about the signs we saw the other night with against PSG when Jed Lee King got into the space and was driving the ball forward. And Jed's no slouch. But if you had Micky van de Ven in that scenario, you can move forward. And I think you can move forward far faster and can be incredibly exciting, an absolutely exciting sort of powerful tool to be using. I don't think we're using Micky van de Ven to his strengths in the Thomas Frank system. And I know the counter argument is he's got hamstring issues. If you ask him to make lung-busting runs all of the time, it will result in broken down hamstrings. And my argument to that would be, I hear there's a risk there. No one's suggesting it would be every 5 seconds he's sprinting up and down like Gareth Bale, but it would be a tool that could be better utilised if he was repositioned where he is for Holland as a left back. And if the answer is still, we don't want to risk his hamstrings, then if I'm entirely honest, I think that we might as well sell the player. I'm not advocating this. I'm just saying that if we're going to play with a Thomas Frank system where his best attributes are never needed and his weaker attributes are amplified, then we might as well sell the player for top money and then go and get a top replacement that's a far better, just all-round defender if that's how we're going to use him. Because to me, I just think that we're, like I say, I think we're minimising his unbelievable, unique talents, and I think we're amplifying his vulnerabilities by using him as we do in the current system. Let's move on, guys, to just I think as last couple of things for you. I've done Rodrigo Mendoza. I've done Gleison Bremer. Franculino due. Midtjylland striker, a player I've been talking about with you guys for months, continues to impress at Midtjylland, and Tottenham are reportedly now seeking to sign the Guinea-Bissau international in January. Apparently, his form at Midtjylland has meant that they've raised his asking price from 23 million euros to 34 million euros, something like that, which again wouldn't put off too many teams in the Premier League. I think Everton are very much looking at him. Tottenham have now stepped in. I think Leeds United and Newcastle are also looking. Look, the player for me is exactly the sort of specimen, the physicality, the athleticism, the bigger, stronger, faster type of player that we're looking for. He's absolutely smashing it in the Danish league, but what supports the notion that he might be ready for a step up, although not necessarily be an immediate sort of starter for Tottenham, would be the fact that he does score in the Europa League. Midtjylland, I haven't seen the results from last night. I'm doing this very early, but Midtjylland until last week were top of the Europa League table, having won all of their games, I believe, and they were. And Franculino is scoring goals in there. Compare him to Samu Agahawa, who has a similar sort of frame, similar sort of physicality, similar pace, similar unbelievable potential. But when you compare his stats in Porto's league performances, he's only really scoring against the bottom half of the table teams in Portugal and hasn't been scoring in the Champions League. So they're kind of similar value propositions between the two. I actually think that I prefer to see Franculino come to Tottenham, although I do understand that the Danish league is a big step up. But look, it didn't stop Lucas Berghvall doing some good bits in his time in Scandinavia before he came over. Let me know your thoughts on him. I'm not going to sit there and pretend like he's the number one target for me, but I think he's a realistic target, and I think he will be a fantastic player in the years to come. But again, are we looking for a player that's one for maybe now, but definitely tomorrow? Or are we looking for someone that's definitely now? And if we are looking for a definitely now impact player, I don't know, guys. Maybe we have it in Kolo Muani. If we can keep him fit and happy and a place where he can settle, maybe we have someone in Kolo Muani. But whilst Richalison is still scoring goals, I think we should be continuing with that sort of utilisation of a front two. I quite like the 4-4-2 vision, although how that works by trying to keep players like Kudus and Odebear and Xavi Simons happy, I'm not so sure. But that's a Thomas Frank headache, and we can discuss that in tomorrow's preview during the morning show. I think that's about it for the various transfer news, views, and clues for you. Have I got anything else for you here? No, I don't think so. But Franculino, interesting player. Let me know your thoughts on that one, guys. And apart from that, I will leave it there, and I will see you hopefully this evening for a fan phone show. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And remember that we are also on Spotify and stuff. So if you are interested in Spotify content and you don't mind, then have a look for me. Spurs Talk Show. You'll find me there. Give us a like and a follow. Appreciate you guys. Take care.